Okay, so we're going to take a look at our top three instruments, that being the airspeed indicator, altitude indicator, and the altimeter, and read their values. Currently, we are in the air. Our airspeed indicator's value is 105 knots. We can see the altitude indicator is straight. We are now going to point the nose of the plane down for 3 seconds before reading the instruments once again. So as we can see, the speed of the aircraft has increased to 120 knots. The altitude indicator shows the line going up, meaning the pitch down movement, and the altitude is slightly decreased. Finally, we are going to point the nose back up until we are higher than the original position. As we can see, the speed has dropped to 110 knots. The altitude indicator shows a slight pitch and out movement, and the altitude increases. So in this lesson, we are going to talk about the weight versus the takeoff distance. There are going to be a total of 3 payload weights. That includes 296 pounds, 600 pounds, and 900 pounds. So let's start off with the 296 pounds. As I go down the runway, I'm keeping the plane as straight as possible, using the flaps just for some extra support. So as we can see, for 296 pounds, we're going 79.75 miles per hour, and the distance before takeoff is 1,475 feet. This can be seen in the top left corner. Next, we move on to the 600 pounds. So as we can see, we are going 101.7 miles per hour, and the distance before takeoff is 2,675 feet. As we can see, it took a lot longer with this payload weight. Finally, we move on to the 900 pounds. As we can see, we have reached 112 miles per hour and 4,261 feet before we could take off. In this lesson, we are going to talk about lift plus drag. There are going to be a total of 2 parts. Firstly, we are going to look at lift. In the dataset tab, we are ticking the last 2 boxes in line 3, which is speeds, and line 92, which is wing lift. Next, we are going in flight level before climbing for 3 seconds to measure airspeed and to see where the green arrows are. So as we can see, whenever we climb, the green arrows go down as well as the airspeed. Now let's look at going even further until the green arrows are lower. So as we can see, once again, the airspeed has dramatically gone down. And finally, we're going to try and stall. The recovery procedure is to point the nose down until it reaches 80 knots and then go back up slowly. In the second part of this lesson, we are going to talk about drag. Firstly, we are going to look at the data set. As you can see, I've ticked that box in line 3, 13, 92, and 93. Next, we are going to compare whenever the landing gear is up versus when it's down. As we can see, the airspeed is 125.8 miles per hour when the landing gear is down. Whenever it is up, we go much faster. The airspeed increases to 160.5 miles per hour. Finally, we are going to compare the flaps up and flaps down, starting with the flaps down. So with the flaps down, the true airspeed was 138.9 miles per hour. The wing lift was 1,407 and the wing drag was 92.37. Finally, the flaps up. So as we can see, we are traveling faster. The true airspeed is 154.2 miles per hour. There is less lift with 1,376 and less drag with 44.75. In this lesson, we are going to land the plane with flaps up and down. Let's start off with flaps down. As we head towards the runway, we are lowering the RPM to 1,500 and the flaps fully down. Now let's land with the flaps up. So again, we lowered the RPM to 1,500. For flaps up and down, I also kept it to 85 knots. It's really important to keep the wings level. In this lesson, I'm going to talk about flight stability. Firstly, we are looking at lift vectors. I have everything set up, so let's get started. So as we can see, when we dive down, the lift vectors go down, and when I climb back up, the lift vectors go up. So next we are going to look at testing center of gravity and elevator deflection. Again, I've ticked the box here. That being line 63 and line 74. For each testing, a different center of gravity will be used. That being minus 16.4 and plus 21.2. So let's start with the minus 16.4. As we can see, with minus 16.4, the deflection is 13.26. Finally, we move on to 21.2. So we set our 21.2 here. As we can see, the deflection with this is much less. It's 0.811 degrees. In this lesson, we are going to talk about aspect ratio. I have set up 5 planes to test different aspect ratios. For the purpose of this video, I will be using 50 feet and 10 feet wingspan planes to test takeoff distance. Starting with the 50 feet, I've ticked the boxes required in data input and output. So as we can see, the takeoff distance is 1,040 feet. Now let's test the 10 feet wingspan. So as we can see, the distance is 5,514 feet. This is significantly more than this 50 feet. Whenever landing, the 50 feet feels a lot more precise to me than the 10 feet and easier to handle. In this lesson, we are going to talk about wing loading with different weights and wingspans. Firstly, we're looking at the plane with 15 feet wingspan. The max weight is 2,800 and the total weight is 2,500. So as you can see, the distance to take off was 1,664 feet. Now let's look at 60 feet wingspan with the max weight being 11,000 and total weight being 10,000. For this to be achieved, I had to change the Earth mass to 1.996. So as you can see, it took significantly longer to take off. The distance was 3,051 feet to take off. In this lesson, we are going to talk about power loading. 3 planes were created using X-Plane Maker, one with 150 horsepower, 300 horsepower, and 600 horsepower. We are going to test them. Starting off with the 150 horsepower, true airspeed recorded while flying consistently was 154 miles per hour. This plane weighed 2,500 kg total weight and max weight was 3,000. Moving on to the 300 horsepower plane. So as we can see, the true airspeed was 190 miles per hour. It weighed 2,750 kg total weight and 3,000 maximum weight. It was significantly faster in the air. Finally, the 600 horsepower plane. As you can see, the true airspeed was measured at 266 miles per hour, much faster than the previous 2 planes. It weighed in at 3,000 total weight and 3,500 max weight.